It was a long, expensive pursuit, and one that took years before any profits could be made. Max learned these things more out of idle curiosity than anything else. Unlike most of the people in his barracks, Max had not been recruited because of his years of schooling and experience, but rather because of his hunting skills. Growing up on a ranch in the Texas Hill Country, Max had gone hunting from the time he was quite young, maybe 6 or 7 years old, and it was what he loved to do most in the world. His father had also been a big hunter, as had his uncle, and he had fond memories of the long road trips they would take down to South Texas whenever they could snag a week or two of vacation to hunt for turkeys, feral hogs, his uncle's favorite, and deer. On the nightstand by his bunk, Max kept a small framed photograph that his father had taken of him with his boot propped on the hind quarters of the first buck he had ever shot, its full crown almost larger than he was. The rush of adrenaline he had felt when he first spotted the buck in his binoculars had made his hands tremble. On previous occasions, trembling hands had led to missed shots, and his quarry, thus alerted, had fled. But this time he had managed to calm himself down, and his shot had been true. After that, there had been no stopping him. Max's friends from high school had teased him, saying that he would never get a good-paying job by pursuing his hobby. He had worked as a truck driver for a few years, but he tired of the road and longed for time off so he could get a chance to go hunting. Then one day, he had seen an ad in the newspaper for an experienced hunter, and he had applied online that same evening, attaching dozens of photos of large prey that he had felled. It was the only way he could think of to impress the people who might otherwise frown at his meager work experience. The job meant that he would have to live way up north in the Arctic for a few months of the year, but he would make enough money during that time that he could afford to take the rest of the year off and spend lots of time hunting. So far, to his dismay, being a bear hazer at Riesig Oil had been much more boring than he had expected. Protecting the workers from polar bears had sounded like a lot of fun, but it had turned out to be more like just babysitting the workers while he held a toy shotgun in his hands. Still, whenever he got too frustrated by the tediousness of the endless expanse of ice, he reminded himself of the months of hunting that lay ahead, and that generally cheered him. "The machinery's already set up there? Everything's ready to go?" asked Brian, his voice cracking as he strained to be heard over the loud stuttering of the helicopter. He was referring to the drilling equipment they would need to use to be able to remove the ice core samples. Sometimes they were required to spend extra time setting up all of the equipment, but often it was another team that identified the area and prepared it for their team. Since they wanted samples from depths greater than 30 meters, they would need to use specialized drills that hung on cables. The drills could be electromechanical or electrothermal, Brian had explained to Max earlier that week. Thus, Max now knew that, in Brian's opinion, electrothermal drills were not as consistent and were to be avoided if possible. "You bet," said Evan, consulting his instruments. "They have it all set for us. We should be able to get in and out in about 2 hours. As they gained altitude, Max, who was sitting by a window, looked out and saw gray everywhere. The sky above, the ice below, and everything in between. The entire landscape, as far as the eye could see, was varying shades of unbroken gray. He was certain that whatever other faults it might have, Texas never had this much gray. The ride was a short one, and within 15 minutes, the 4 men had reached the site where the drilling equipment stood waiting for them. Evan put the helicopter down, and soon they were outside, feeling the cold wind biting their exposed faces. Max walked over with Brian, who was wearing a bright red knit cap, and watched him as he inspected the long cylindrical drill bit which was connected to a slender cable that would soon suspend the drill shaft as it made its way down into the hole. On the end of the drill bit, Brian showed Max the 4 carbide teeth that would cut into the ice, shaving layer after layer as it penetrated downward. "See these 2 barrels there?" Brian asked. Max peered in and saw an inner one and an outer one. "The motor you see there," Brian said, indicating with his gloved finger, "is attached to the inner one, and that's what makes it rotate." Max peered at the